Stay with news linked to the president because the business community says it is getting tired of government's empty promises on the economy. It's been promising growth and jobs now, but more jobs, in fact, are being cut and growth has weakened. President Cyril Ramaphosa is due to meet with Business Unity South Africa any moment from now. We'll take you live to that address as soon as it begins. But let's talk then just a bit more about what we are likely to hear and bring in economist Sifiso Skenjana, who's with me here in studio. Sifiso, very good afternoon to you. So we're very early into the year. We're dealing with the news that Massmart, for example, is likely to cut over 1,000 jobs when it closes over 30 of its stores. Yeah. President Ramaphosa also has to contend with that devastating unemployment data last year that we're nearing the 30% mark overall, much higher, of course, among young people. Yeah. What could he possibly tell business people at this point that would be encouraging?
I think the burning issue certainly, firstly, is security of electricity supply. And so I think we're already hearing, of course, rumblings whether or not Minister Pravin Gordhan is facing the axe or not, and stabilization of that utility. I think so. Eskom has said that the demand deficiency is about 2,000 to 3,000 megawatts. That's pretty much how much they are unable to bring to the market right now, and that's effectively stage 2 or stage 3 that they would need to do for the rest of the year. And so I think there's certainly going to be a conversation around that and the implication that has on economic growth. We've seen the World Bank citing the poor electricity supply as one of the reasons why they revised growth downwards for 2020 for the country, down from 1% to 0.9. So I think that's one of the things that's really going to be critical in that conversation. But I think the other parts that are going to come to that conversation is what we've already heard from BUSA President talking around how government creates a conducive environment for business to operate. And what that looks like will be quite interesting in terms of how he responds, in terms of what's the texture behind that. Is it ease of doing business? Is it corruption? What portions of this conducive environment is business asking for them to operate a little bit more effectively? I think that's probably going to be a crux of the conversation that comes out there.
Realistically, though, how much room does President Cyril Ramaphosa have to move as far as trying to fix this economy? Because the data suggests that things are getting worse.
I mean, he's president, so he's certainly got room to move. It's just around making really tough choices and bold choices. And
has he demonstrated an ability to do that?
Well, I think leading up to the election last year, we expected that he would be a bit trepidatious in his approach for political reasons, of course, trying to make sure that everyone's interests are served. And again, we heard at the BUSA engagement today that they're pushing on the president to stop trying to please everyone's interests. And so I think we have seen a consultative president for sure. And maybe now, as we said, we saw, elections coming through in May last year. And this is, I guess, his second official State of the Nation address that's going to follow coming up this year now. And we'll see then if, he's demonstrating, I think, a little bit stronger leadership. But as we said, is that, leading up to elections is always a very tricky time politically. And so one would have expected him to toe the kind of the line quite carefully around whose interests he doesn't serve along the process.
Quite interesting that you hear today from the likes of Business Unity South Africa that there's a sense of fatigue among the business community with how perhaps the president over-consults and under-delivers at this stage. Because when Cyril Ramaphosa was being touted for the job of ANC president and was ultimately elected, he was seen as likely to be a pro-business president for the country because he himself, of course, has a very long history in the business space. Yet here we are, it's not coming together as easily as people would have thought that it would. I want to get your thoughts on that.
So, I mean, also you mustn't forget that he's also a unionist, right? and I think many people might have conveniently forgotten that he's a unionist at heart as well. And so I think he's certainly got a socialist bone in him, and that therefore straddles, I think, the business interests and the governing party's interests as well. And again, I think if he's got ambitions for a second term, and then he again would try to be as inclusive as possible in some of his choices. But as we've seen, for example, the difference between him and Minister Mboweni, right, where Mr. Mboweni, when he decides that he wants to go for something specific, he goes for it, and then he apologizes later. And so, and of course, the party has responded with disdain, on his choices. And so I think that's the kind of thing that he's observing. There's the same thing with Minister Pravin Gordhan, right? Is whenever he's gone out and just decided to do his own thing, again he's been met with disdain, I think. And so I think the ethos and the culture around the ruling party is that you don't get to do what you want to do. And so I think if he is still nurturing a second term, he's probably going to use this term to be a lot more inclusive in his approach, and maybe then hopefully use a second term to do the big bang approach. But again, that might be too late. Mm-hmm. And so the country right now is bleeding. I think through every orifice that we have as a country. And right now is the time that we certainly need, I think, much bolder choices. And I think over and above just bolder choices, I think we need a particular direction. We need a certain kind of deliberance around the direction of the economic growth that we want.
So the complexities of incumbency then appearing to be the biggest problem for the president currently. Sifiso Skenjana, stand by for me, because we're going to talk more to you once the president has delivered that address to Business Unity South Africa members.